Welcome, everybody, to the In the Making podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest joining us. If you've ever heard of McCain or Maple Leaf Foods, this man has been a part of making that possible. If neither of those names ring any bells, think back to the last time you ate a French fry or any other frozen food for that matter. McCain Foods not only produces 1/3 of the world's global supply of frozen potatoes, but it also supplies a monumental number of restaurants across the globe with frozen food. Today, we have Scott McCain joining us. In the mid-90s, Scott's father and his uncle started a small business that quickly expanded into the $10 billion a year business that exists today. We're very excited for you to hear this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott, and we can't wait to hear your feedback. I guess the starting point, Scott, where I wanted to begin was obviously you're a man who wears many hats between, sitting on the board of your family's home office and running the hockey team and mentoring young entrepreneurs, and as well as Maple Leaf Foods. Let's start at the beginning of your story, I guess, to what it was like growing up in a family with a business that was obviously exploding. And then you can talk as much as you want about the turmoil that it went through and kind of how you found your place in that, I guess, family business.
Well, why don't we start there? And then I don't want to go into, great lengths and detail, but it's kind of interesting as you get older, you start to reflect on some of the successes your father and your uncle, or my father and my uncle had. And I think it's when I'm age 65, I have a much higher appreciation of just how amazing it was to grow up in a small village of Florenceville with 700 people, and to live in a very grounded environment where, I went to the same small brick schoolhouse as my father did. He was there from grade 1 to 12, and I was there from grade 1 to 6. And when you grow up in that environment, you got to appreciate 750 people is not a very big village.
When you were growing up there, was at that point, let's say once you were in grade 1, 2, 3, 4, was the business just starting? Because it was in the mid 50s, right?
Yeah, the business started in 58, gentlemen.
Yeah.
And so I would have been, I was born in 56. So 2 years after I was born, the company opened its first plant in a friggin' cow pasture in a little village. It's a greenfield cow pasture, and was the first French fry factory of its kind in Canada. So, yeah, when did my father and uncle know the business was being a success? No, they had no idea. And so I grew up just like in a small rural environment where, my grandfather was in the potato business, so he was a successful shipper of potatoes. But we were. It was like, no, there was no grandiose visions. There was no sense of, wow, this is going to be a multi-million-dollar success story. No, I didn't grow up in that environment at all. I grew up and all my closest friends are farmers, and guys they like to hunt and fish. That's what you do in northern New Brunswick. It's potato country. Yeah. So that's my values are very grounded in roots in rural New Brunswick. So,
and at what point, how old were you when, I guess, what was the turning point where things started to really take that turn for?
Well, I think the business started in 58. I think probably in the late 60s. So possibly 12 years later, which I would have been 14 years old. I think pretty much everybody knew that McCain Foods was certainly a success story in Canada. And to a certain extent, they'd already gone and built a factory in England. So we were seen as a company that had vision, and a company that had a purpose, and a company that was on a fairly high trajectory to grow and to grow and expand in many parts of the world. So I guess I'd have to say I would have been maybe 13, 14. I remember when I went to university, my first year at Mount Allison, I took a BCom, and I used to get teased a bit, of course, because of our background. And by then I'm 16 to 17 years old. McCain Foods is a pretty well known name in most circles in Canada. And so I'd get teased, called French fry and string bean and all this other stuff. It's just part of what it is. But you grew up in it, and it's like, hey, it is what it is. And laugh about it and carry on. So, but at the end of the day, it's and when you grow up in it, when you're growing up in it, you don't appreciate the level of intensity and the level of tough decisions and hurdles and challenges and roadblocks that my father and my uncle and all of the management teams overcame to make it a success. I mean, Can you imagine, Dan, how you guys are, what, mid-30s, something like that?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s. Well, my father was 28 when he first started the business, and he and his brother were going to England when he was age 31, 32 years old. Going and investing, $40-50 million in a factory in England, Northern England. Hell, I'm not sure they even knew where Northern England was.
Yeah.
And so it's just hard to imagine.
Did it really, other than obviously at school, like in terms of home life, did you feel like there was a big shift, I guess, in how your parents or your dad and your uncle kind of raised you and brought you along, considering that they had a vision for where the company was headed, but you probably had no clue yet?
Yeah, no, I don't think we were. I think my parents, and I think my cousins too, we all lived in a small community, fortunately, because it was all my uncle's knots were all there. So there was four brothers that started the business. My dad and my uncle were probably the predominant shareholders that drove the business. But we just, as I said, we grew up in a very normal environment. And, I played my first hockey in an outdoor rink. Same as you see here in Lawrence Park here, an outdoor rink that's with lights, so like bulb lights over top, strung across the top. And so we built our first indoor arena in Florensville in 1967. It was a Centennial Arena. So I would have been 11 years old. So it was very rural.
So everything was pretty normal for you.
Yeah, no. Like we had we weren't spoon fed. We were very fortunate. We had, I lived in a nice, decent home. I never had a car. I never owned a car until I got out of university. I wasn't allowed to have one. I could drive my mom and dad's. You had to. I went to university. I got on the train to go to university, or bus, or hitchhike to the school, whatever happened, how we get there. No, I wasn't. We weren't given any special favors. But that's. I think that helps shape your values and who you are. So
yeah. Agree. And so, I guess at some point, I feel like when you're growing up with that, and my dad had a business, obviously not as large, but there's kind of a point where as you start to mature and get older, I know you guys were getting, vetted to be brought into the business as time passed. How did that transition look from being, a regular teenager to your dad telling you, hey, we're going to get you to be really involved in this $1 billion corporation, and here's what your responsibilities are?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good question. Some people would assume that, because your parents started a business that you would be almost forced to go into that business. That was never the case in our case. We were always given the opportunity. I think my father would like to have had us go into the business, but my brother and I did. But there was never an occasion where he said, look, you need to. He said, look, you can do whatever you want. There was no pressure. I think I had summer jobs always lined up because there was different things I could do. I had one summer I went to work in England. I had one summer I went to work in sales and PEI. I had one summer I worked on the factory floor. So I think in some respects, my father was trying to give me different experiences to see what I might like.
Yeah.
And what path I may choose. My brother, Michael, was more into the marketing and sales and the IT space, and he did more in those areas. I was more of a guy that liked to work on the factory floor, as I felt that it was suited my people skills. And so that's where I made my mark. And when I left university, I joined the company. I went to England, worked over there for a year in manufacturing. They were just building, the company was pretty new, pretty young, and up in northern England. So I said, well, I'm 21 years old, didn't have any attachment. I said, hey, this is the place for me. So that's off. I went over there for a year, and then I was only there a year, and then they asked me to come back and work in manufacturing in Canada. So I worked in Florensville for about, I guess as a production foreman, supervisor, production manager. And then I was offered an opportunity to go to Oakville to be the VP of operations in a cheese company. I did that for 3 years, and they asked me to
outside of McCain.
Yeah, McCain Foods had just bought a cheese business. And
right.
Gosh, I don't know why we did that, but anyway, they did. And I didn't buy them. My father and my uncle did.
Yeah.
They wanted some manufacturing people to go up there, so they asked me to go up and see if I could work that. I didn't know a damn thing about making cheese, so it was a new experience. It was a learning experience, I can tell you. But I was there for 3 years, and then they had an open up in one of the factories in northern New Brunswick, up in Grand Falls, which is about 50 miles north of Florensville. So I went up there. They asked me to go there and manage that site, and we were making pizzas and juice and French fries and broccoli. In the peak season, we would have had 2,000 people working on that site.
Yeah.
So I did that for 3 years, and then they asked me to come back to Florensville, and I became the VP of operations, and I had 5 factories under my wing. And I did that for 3 or 4 years, and then we went into some family challenges with different, when we had our trouble in court.
Yeah.
And that was painful for everybody.
And was that, and just to touch on that, was that when your uncle and your father had a disagreement about your brother taking over?
Yeah, no, look, I think that was what was the headline news, Dan.
Yeah.
And Patrick, but I think as I look back, clearly, succession planning for any entrepreneurs that are passing on the baton from first generation to the second generation, doesn't matter what business you're in. It's a very big challenge, and most companies find it difficult. And if it's not planned well and in advance and properly with good governance, it's very difficult. It's hard for the entrepreneurs that started the business to let go, and it's hard for the next generation to step into the boots of successful people, to follow them up and try to manage it in such a way that it's going to be successful. So, I mean, it's not an uncommon issue, and we were thrust into that situation, and it's just a host of things. But you know what, we got through it. So Michael and I and my father went on to the Maple Leaf side of things. We decided, we figured, we better go do something different, and we went and got involved in Maple Leaf in the mid-'90s. And we stayed as shareholders in McCain Foods because it's a great company. And so we stayed on as shareholders. My father stayed on the board. And Michael and I stayed on the holding company board, and we did that for quite a few years. So I worked with Michael for 20 years in Maple Leaf and ran their agribusiness group, and we had a lot of fun and made lots of mistakes. But we grew the business, and then until eventually he took on the majority of Maple Leaf himself, and then I and my 2 sisters kept our McCain shares, and then ultimately ended up going back into McCain Foods on the board. And then eventually they asked me if I would take on the role of chairman. So that's kind of the story.
And so, if I'm not mistaken, Maple Leaf was another entity before, and then McCain ended up buying it, right?
Yeah.
Maple Leaf because of the exit of your dad?
Yeah. People get confused because, I mean, it is confusing. But when Michael and I and my father exited McCain Foods in the mid-'90s, I think it became pretty clear that, we better go do something.
Yeah.
We weren't going to sit idle, and my father would have been 65, and I would have been, I was probably 38 at the time. And, we figured, let's go try to do something different. And we were fortunate. The Maple Leaf Foods business was shown to us to be an opportunity that could be acquired. We could buy into that business, and we did. and we partnered with Ontario Teachers, and we had a controlling stake, and we ended up going into a business that none of us knew very well. And so we had to learn it, and it was tough. It's not an easy business. It was very difficult. And we had lots of ups and downs over 20 years, but it's just like anything. You just get in there and you learn it, and you try to figure it out, what's important, and carry on. So Michael eventually became the CEO, and I took a bigger leadership role in the agribusiness in the front end of the business. We had a good bakery business, a good meat business, and today is primarily just a meat business. In fact, it's exclusively a plant protein and a meat protein business, pork and poultry. And my brother's the CEO, and they're doing a great job. So,
Scott, I had a question for you. Actually, I was wondering something, and this is totally off of Dan's script. So if you don't want to answer, we can definitely cut it. But I'm just wondering, because like we always talk, like when we're running our business, basically like being an entrepreneur, like running a business, it's all about like putting out fires and just kind of like dealing with the problems and stuff like that. I just remember a few years ago, I can't remember exactly how long ago, and I can't remember the exact situation, but I know Maple Leaf Foods has been in the spotlight in the past because of, some like a problem with the meat here or there. And I'm just curious, like how, as somebody on the management end, you would go about like something that in the public is like so public and like is such a huge deal in like so many people's eyes, and how like as somebody who's like has like a controlling stake in the business, you go about like handling an issue that comes up like that.
Well, it's interesting. It's a very good question, Patrick. It was what you're referring to. It was when in 2000 and
Listeria.
Oh gosh,
Listeria or Mad Cow. I didn't want to just say because I wasn't 100% sure.
We had an outbreak of a listeria.
Listeria, okay.
In the factory.
Yeah.
And it's listeria can be present in different forms. You could have listeria in your fridge, for that matter. Mm-hmm. But if it's highly concentrated and it's not dealt with properly in your production facilities, and if it's consumed in a large amount, particularly for an elderly person or a pregnant person, it can result in death. Oh my God. It's one of these things where, having gone through this and the learnings, and after a number of people that died from what happened, you learn a lot very quickly, and there's something to be said for it's deep, shit happens in plants, and shit happens everywhere. And it's not the fact that it happens, it's how you deal with it that matter. And in the case of the listeria crisis back in the early 2000s, it was my brother and the senior leadership team, led by my brother, that took the decision on how to handle it. And it was to be transparent, and it was to be accountable, and to make sure that everybody knew that, look, the buck stops with here. It's not. We didn't point the fingers at anybody else. There was lots of people that were responsible for what happened, because it happened on the factory floor. But at the end of the day, Michael and the senior management team are accountable for when these things happen. And he did a heck of a job in making sure that the public knew, and everybody knew that, look, we were going to get to the bottom of it, and we were learning, and we just simply had to work hard to find the root causes and to try and make sure that this would never happen again. Because, at the end of the day, we were accountable. And we didn't blame anybody else except for ourselves. It happened on our watch, so we had to fix it. And that's the position that Michael took. In fact, there's a lot of cases that are being studied in universities that how he handled it. Because it was a bad situation, but we didn't try to blame the lawyers or the bankers or blame the plant manager or the employees. Look, it was something that we went through, and we had learned from it. And today our food safety record it's significantly enhanced as a result of the learnings we got from that crisis. So.
Yeah, I know that we like I love that answer, because I feel like that's the best way, right? To just take total responsibility and then move forward. Like, I know last year I was in Montreal, and obviously it's a bit different, but we have like ladders and stuff like that, and we try to give our guys safety training. I had a guy last year actually fall off a ladder on a job, and he had to be rushed to the hospital. And like, yeah, it was the same thing. Like I'd, talk to his parents and apologize and take full responsibility and make sure that I instituted new protocols and fully like gave everybody more training and stuff like that on how to like make sure that this never happens again, kind of thing, So I like that
Well,
answer.
Today, Patrick, the metrics that's most used in most manufacturing facilities in the food business is called TRIR, and it stands for Total Reportable Incident Rate. And it's a metrics that just in the last 20 years has become the sort of the most well known across processing and food businesses, and I think other businesses for that matter. And we as leaders, you as leaders running your small business, and we as leaders running a large business, have an ultimate responsibility of the safety of their employees. And if somebody gets hurt on your watch, then you're accountable.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, you didn't. The guy fell off the ladder. I mean, you weren't in the ladder, and you weren't there.
No.
But
my
that doesn't, Patrick, in today's environment, how safety is seen by most well-run companies, it's, well, maybe it was the employee's fault. They weren't paying attention, or they weren't wearing they weren't wearing their safety glasses, or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're accountable. They were supposed to. And by being transparent and by taking accountability for it and saying, look, I'm going to learn from this, and we made some mistakes. A lot of people don't want to make mistakes. They're afraid to, because they might get sued, or they might get this or that, or legal action. You're better off to take responsibility and say, look, I'm gonna learn from this, and it's not going to happen on my watch again if I can prevent it. So
that's exactly it. Yep.
That's a big focus for us now. Was there ever a point in terms of, this could be anything that you want to touch on, whether it was McCain, Maple Leaf, or even like your home office or anything, where you felt like it all could have just collapsed and fallen apart, and it didn't? Or was that an ongoing thing? Was there one or two incidences you can remember?
Let me give you one that's fresh in my mind, gentlemen.
Yeah.
It's called COVID-19.
The wrong thing on the podcast.
Yeah. It's called COVID-19. Really? Let me just share this with you. So yeah, I took over in the role as chairman of the board. Before that, I was a director for I don't know how many years. But I have got pretty good knowledge of the business. But I took over the chairman's role back in November of 2019. I think that's at the annual meeting they appointed me chairman. So that was great. And so we got through November, December, January, and February. And if you recall, last year in January of 20, the crisis in China was just starting to unfold.
Yeah,
and then we in North America,
whispers.
You guys, like all of us in North America, were looking at this and saying, "Well, that's interesting." And what's going on in China?
That's far away.
China, and it's so far away. This is no big news, and you know what? It's not going to affect us. And okay. So then all of a sudden, it ends up going over to Italy, and we were all watching in horror what's going on in Italy. It's a little closer. Well, fast forward to the month of March. Within the first 3 weeks of March, our business basically was cut in half.
Jeez.
So
because it's restaurants mostly, right?
Yeah, our business in the McCain side of it, McCain business is mostly a food service business. We're retail in Canada and the United States and in Australia and England, but we're primarily a food service business. Yeah. We do retail, but food service is a much bigger market, and that's where the bulk of our business. So, as the world closed down, and social, all this sort of thing. Restaurants and pubs and institutions, whether it be stadiums and for sports or for hospitals or for schools or any food concessions of any kind, all of a sudden they're closed.
They're gone.
So, our business was like, wow. And so you asked the question, was there ever a time? Here I said, I'm chairman now for 3 months, and holy hell, this thing's going to fly all to hell. And it's going to be on my watch. So, yeah, we were all nervous, and we had to cope with that crisis. And thank goodness we can look. In fact, I'm just finishing writing my letter. We had our 6-month board meetings here last week. and we publish our results to our shareholders, and then I have to write a letter from the chairman, and so it's basically, look, we got through the second half of last year, which is last, I guess it was July through to December, and we were very resilient, and we bounced back. And as the economy opened up and stores opened up, we were able to recover. Then it's taken a dip again in November, December, and this quarter is going to be a little tougher. But to answer your question, I think that was the most significant moment in our company's history, as far as I can remember, in terms of this thing could have been an unmitigated disaster.
And what happens, in a world where COVID wasn't coming close to ending, and this thing lasted 3 years? Obviously I don't want to say too big to fail, but when a company is that big and supports that many jobs, I feel like there's a lot more of a cushion in terms of government support and banking and whatnot. And you're an established business, so they know you're not going to default on it. But is there a real fear that all of that gets taken away and you can't, pay the loans? Or
oh yeah, totally. Oh, there's a huge fear. If you didn't treat it that way, Dan, you might not be successful, because fear it's a difficult thing, but it forces you to make hard decisions and do things that to survive. So we were no different than other businesses that you read about in the paper every day. We went into we had basically three major priorities. Our first priority was the safety of our people, because we knew that when you're running big plants where people are interacting and it's hard to social distance, you have to take extra precaution to make sure that your protocols are in place to ensure the safety of those people, so they're not picking up the virus.
Yeah.
And then we had our second priority was cash generation, because when you're bleeding cash, when your business goes in half, you have to figure out, well, what am I going to do to try to mitigate the cash outflow. So that was a priority. And then finally, we're looking at how do we find different sources of revenue, either by moving away from food service into retail, or more focus on takeout and delivery, because a lot of these places that closed, they stayed open by takeout and delivery. So you have to gear your production around products that would suit that market. Mm-hmm. So between revenue generation on your top line, your cash preservation, to preserve cash as much as possible, and the people safety, those became the three most important goals of our organization for 6 months. And it's proved to be really, 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 really the right thing to do. So.
What were there any positives that came out of it, where you pivoted in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise done, and you discovered new avenues or strategies that you may not have had? Or was it all just downhill?
No. Look, you know what? You've heard the saying. Maybe you haven't. But what do they say? Never waste a pandemic. And that sounds. In fact, it does sound harsh. But
yeah,
what it really is saying is that what can you learn from it? And what can you do to reconfigure your business to make it more resilient and able to cope with any future shocks like this? And forces you to really think about how you're going to pivot to the new realities of what's life going to be like when the pandemic finishes. And the biggest thing is being on this call right now. Do you guys ever remember being on Zoom calls prior to COVID?
I didn't even know Zoom existed.
Yeah,
no
one knew about it.
Look at the amount of change that this is going to create for businesses. Businesses, in fact, in our business today, now we're talking about what are we going to look like in the post-COVID environment, and how are we going to be work from home half the time, quarter of the time? Yeah. How are we going to create positive culture if nobody talks to each other? They're always on computers. Yeah. What are people's expectations about who wants to get on a bus for an hour in the morning, an hour for a train or whatever? 2 hours of their day, when they think, well, I can work from home and get just as much, if not more, done. Now, these things are really, really going to be critical in the post-pandemic world. So every company, including Well, just most companies are trying to grapple with, look, how's this going to work, and how can I make it more efficient and more effective for my employees and for the business as a result of it.
They're all really like interesting questions that I agree. Like once this kind of starts to clear up a bit, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Because I know that a lot of companies are thinking like, oh, we can save a lot of money if we don't rent an office. Everybody's working from home already. And but like you said, like with the culture, like that's something that we're really focusing on, because we're trying to build a team here, and we're really trying to make sure that everybody kind of meshes, and we have that culture where everybody kind of, meshes together, and we create this really cohesive team. And I don't see that being very possible if we didn't have a place where everybody could kind of congregate at times.
Yeah. Well, there will be a lot of HR folks busy working and reading information and up to date sort of thinking on how to create culture in the new environment where people are working from home maybe half the time. I've heard all kinds of things where everything from, we're going to have culture days in our office, so when people come, there's going to be time spent on just team building and bonding and that sort of thing, because you can't get that when you're on Zoom calls.
Yep.
About how do we make sure that our schedules, the technology fits. Now, do we need to have cameras in every office or every conference room so half the people are present and the other half are on the Zoom call because they're working from home or remotely? It's going to completely change how the dynamics for a lot of businesses. In your case, you guys are, you're in a business where service related, and so people are going to still want their windows cleaned and their eaves troughs done and their patios washed. And you can't do that with a Zoom meeting. but most businesses, businesses, frankly, I'm in the Maritimes a lot. A lot of the Maritimers, people are leaving Ontario, moving to the Maritimes to say, I can buy a house down there, and I can work from down there, and for a company that's based in Toronto or Calgary, Montreal, Vancouver, whatever. If I have to go visit, if I have to fly up to Toronto once a week, I'll do it. It's no big deal. Fly up for a day a week.
Real estate is certainly cheaper.
Yeah, real estate cheaper. They'd save money in terms of buying the house, and their quality of life. They might say, look, if you want me, I'm really good at what I do. I ain't living in Toronto. I want to live in a different setting or a different environment. And I'll work from home. And if I need to come to the office in Toronto, I'll gladly come. If it's once a week or twice a week. But the rest of the time, I'm much happier working in whatever. So it's changing the whole paradigm of how work's going to be done. So,
a question that I was thinking of, at the beginning of the call, as you said, you're in the second generation. You didn't start the business, but you stepped into that role by proxy. Did growing up, you obviously knew that you had massive shoes to fill. Did you ever feel any insecurities in terms of making your mark and knowing that you made your own impact?
Well, that's a good question. I think I'm pretty fortunate. I was probably, my DNA is not hardwired to say, how do I get to the top first? It's not who I am. Any promotion I ever got was based on, well, if you think I'm ready to move and you want to promote me, then fine. But I don't ever remember going into anybody's office saying, look, I need a promotion. I need to move. So just look, if there was an opportunity and they wanted me to do it and said, look, we need you to go here, go there. I said, fine, let's get going. So I never felt pressured to take on more than I felt comfortable with. And quite frankly, I liked what I did. Every job I ever had in manufacturing, I loved it. I learned a lot. I was managing people, and it wasn't easy. There's lots of days were tough, but that's what made it interesting. And so I learned every opportunity I had, I learned from it, and tried to grow and move forward. But it was just a natural progression. You know what I mean? I was never sort of storming in somebody's office and said, oh, my last name's McCain. You need to give me this plant manager job or this VP job. It's not the way I operate. If it was felt by the people that I reported to that I deserved a promotion or move a different role, then I was called in and said, look, we want you to consider this, and 9 times out of 10, I took it on.
Where we're at in terms of our business is a very, I feel, a pivotal point, because up until right now, it's pretty much just been us running everything. And obviously we rely on people in different parts of the business. But mostly we would be the ones putting out all the fires and dealing with everything. And now the biggest problem has grown to a much more abstract one. Whereas before it was simple problems like, how do I increase my sales this week? Or how do I produce the jobs I need to produce this week? And now, as we're growing bigger, we're realizing that the impact that we have as individuals is very minimal in terms of direct efforts. If I go and I try to do sales or hiring or marketing, I'm going to have a very small impact in the grand scheme of things. So we're starting to have a much bigger reliance on the people that are on our team and that support us. And so I guess where I'm going with this question is, having managed so many people and managed the production floor, what do you feel is the biggest one or few skills or traits that you had as a leader that allowed you to get the most out of your people?
Oh heavens, that's a good question, Dan. And you know, I guess what worked for me. You know, I mean, you learn from your experiences for sure. I mean, you as you grow, you get older, you learn from your experiences. But I guess I always felt, this is in my case, that, you know, things like humility, good listening skills, high regard and respect for other people's opinions and thoughts and ideas. It's amazing. Most of the leaders that over the years I always respected were the ones that, you know, they could give me hell for something or give me shit for something that I deserved. But when I walked out of their office, I didn't feel like it was personal. It was just like they were just saying, look, here's the lesson, and you need to improve, and you need to pay attention. But it wasn't like, it didn't make me feel like I was inferior or incompetent. It's just, they just managed me by saying, look, you know, you got to learn from your mistakes, and here's what you should have done or could have done and you should have thought of, and you need to be prepared. And, you know, some people said, it's like getting in the batter's box. You get 3 strikes. You know, first 2, yeah, you're still in the batter's box, but the 3rd strike, you're out.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I'd like to think that I tried to manage by a similar sort of fashion. Say, look, you're in a position of authority, and you know, you have to. A lot of the best leaders are the ones that have the best followership. So if you don't have followership on your team, and they don't have the respect for you, 2 gentlemen as the top, then you're going to struggle. And the key learnings, I guess I learned very early on. I had a supervisor. His name was Bud Cox. I think he had grade 8 or 9 or 10 education. And he was my supervisor. I was the line foreman. I didn't know anything. I graduated from university, so, you know, I was supposed to be smart and all this stuff. And yeah, you learn a lot of tools. You guys all went to school, and so they teach you a lot of stuff, but they don't teach you how to manage people to the degree that you're going to learn on the floor. And I learned more from this guy that had very little education as a supervisor, and than I would have learned from, you know, 2 or 3 years of university. And
Yeah.
what he taught me was how to manage people effectively and how to get the most of them. I can remember me being knee deep in French fries or whatever in a packaging room where the equipment was broken down and there was nothing going right. And I'd call him up. He'd say, well, young man, he said, I'll come see you in half an hour, but you try to figure it out. and you know, he'd give you enough rope to to almost hang yourself. But, so not he just before you're ready to pull the trigger, and then Binger, he'd show up and say, "Well, now look at the mess you're in, and how are we going to learn from this, and don't do it again." But it sounds sort of archaic, and maybe it was, but you as leaders will have to learn from experience that you're only as good as the people that are working for you. I know you guys are both good, but really, as you grow and you get bigger, and all entrepreneurs face this, it's all about the team they have underneath them. And if your business isn't succeeding, you two are accountable.
Yeah.
And you have an obligation to find out why. And if you've got some people that are in positions that they shouldn't be, you got to deal with it. There's a great book by Jim Collins on Good to Great. I don't know if maybe I mentioned it. You guys maybe read it or took it in school.
It's a great
probably
book.
One of the best business books that was ever written.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I love about that book, and they talk about two things that are really critical, is leadership. And you guys are leaders. And if you don't have leadership in your business or any business, it doesn't matter if you're in sport, if you're in university, whatever, you need very, very strong leadership. But equally important is that, you need the right people on the bus. And you need the right people on the bus, and you need them in the right seat, and the wrong people off the bus. And that's a very difficult thing to deal with, because you're dealing with people's lives and their livelihood and their future. And sometimes it doesn't work out. And not most, but a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of keeping people around that they really should say, look, rightly or wrongly, whatever, we've tried this, it isn't working. You need to move on. And we need to find somebody that can do what we need to do to cope with the challenges that we face. And most entrepreneurs, I for one mistake, I hated letting go people. That was my weak suit. When you have somebody underneath on your team that's not, carrying the freight, and you've given them opportunities and you've given them chances, and it's just not working out, then you need to deal with it and say, look, sometimes there's a time to say, look, it's time to move on. And it sounds harsh, and it is, but for the good of everybody in your business, you need to deal with those situations, and it's all about the people. So,
would you say that was your biggest, I guess, weakness, if you had to pick one?
Yeah. My brother always said, Scott, you get married to people, and you get married to them too much, and you get blinded by the fact that they're not performing, and everybody else around you sees it except you. So
yeah, that's
it's not uncommon, guys. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you just a follow-up question to that, because I feel, and I think that Dan will agree with me, that I have a really big problem with that. I have a problem with having hard conversations with people. And I tend to, I've never heard it put that way, but I think it's the perfect way. I tend to get married to people very quickly and often. And like, I know for a fact that I've had employees like that in the past that have been like absolutely terrible for the business overall, but like, I just really liked them as a person, and I just kept giving them chances, even though they definitely shouldn't have had them. And I guess the question at the end of that is just, I know that the way to get better at it is just to kind of do it and like realize, and have somebody more objective like Dan next to me to be like, you're being an idiot. Stop it. This is what you need to do. But did you have any other advice for somebody who has like a fellow softie?
No, Patrick, every person in any stage of their career, doesn't matter what level they are of it, goes through the same thing that you just talked about. It's what we are as humans. It's not fun. And over time, you learn some skills that help you have those difficult conversations. And it comes with experience and training and understanding some key principles. And a couple of things that you could think about is, look, first of all, by keeping people that are weak in your organization, you're actually hurting them, whether they know it or not. Because if they're not performing to the level that they should, then it's probably time. It's in their best interest. It sounds hard, but it's in their best interest to move on, because maybe it's the way you guys are managing, and they would flourish somewhere else. It's like in a hockey team. Think of it as a hockey team. Sometimes you'll take a hockey player He's playing the coach. The coach doesn't like him, this, that, or whatever. He's not performing. You trade the guy, and he goes to another team, and hell, he's a star. I mean, it's sometimes the leadership that you as leaders are providing to them. So, regardless, you just need to move and give them a different environment. So you learn that. And one thing I've learned in many cases, it's not always what you say to them, it's how you say it. And, you can have a difficult conversation with somebody without making them feel like this is a personal attack. And if it's a personal attack, then you guys you're shitty leaders and you should know better. But you'll learn over time that, you have to sit down and say, look, rightly or wrongly, maybe it's our fault, maybe it's some of yours, maybe it's both of us, but it's not working to the degree that we need it to work. And we think it's best for, we're gonna treat you fairly. And that's important when you exit somebody, to treat them fairly, and to treat them with dignity and with respect, and make sure they understand that, look, this isn't personal, but for whatever reason, it's not working, and they need to move. They need to move somewhere else. They need to go and get traded to another team. Look at it as a hockey team. I mean, kids get traded. We trade kids in hockey teams left, right, and center. Coaches do it all the time. Think nothing of it. And is it harsh? Yeah, it's not much fun. It's difficult because the player doesn't like it. He's pissed off, whatever. Or she's pissed off. Doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, these things happen, and you learn to do it. That's the game, and we're all playing the game, and you're trying to win.
Yeah.
And so you just have to learn that skill set of how to do it, and do it with dignity, with honesty, with transparency, and with respect, and make them feel that when they leave, that look, they were honest with me, they were open with me, they told me the truth, and I don't like what they said, and I may not even agree with it, but I respect it, and that's all you can ask for. And it takes some practice.
Very well said. Yeah. That's what I'm starting to realize. Yeah, my problem is more the opposite. Like, I find I don't when I have those hard conversations, I come off instead of being coming off too harsh, I come off too soft, and then I find people don't actually take me seriously.
Yeah, I think it don't beat yourself up, Patrick. It takes some practice.
Yeah.
I'm not, I've been in business a long time. I'm still not that good at it.
Yeah.
It's not much fun, but you know what? Some people have said to me, Scott, he said, you give a lot of people a lot of rope, but when you turn the corner and you say it's enough, man, you come out swinging. You say, okay, look. So once I've turned the corner, and we've let go GMs in our hockey team before, because a couple of guys said, Scott, everybody else in the round knew that guy had to go. You were the last one, but once you got there, it moved fast.
Tell us. I'd really love to jump in that. So you're in it's a junior hockey team, right? This from St. John's Sea Dogs?
St. John's Sea Dogs. It's in the CHL, the major junior hockey level.
And you bought that team, or you started it, or
no? We started from scratch. So it's an interesting story. Your viewers might like it. It's my dad. I've always been involved. Hockey's been part of my life. I've always been. I'm an athlete. I'm a sports fanatic. Love sports. Played it all through university. Played hockey a lot in university. I didn't make the varsity team. I was close. I get cut. I think it was one of the last two defensemen cut. That kind of pissed me off. But that just goes to show. See, you got to learn. You learn from your losses. But anyway, all my friends are hockey players, and I tend to gravitate to that crowd. So in St. John, New Brunswick, the Calgary Flames played there. Their farm team played, the AHL team played in St. John, the St. John Flames. And when they left town, the arena, the facility became empty, and I and a few other investors decided that we'd put a bid in to try and get a franchise to put a new team in there. The league was looking at expansion. In Quebec, there was only 16 teams. And so the league was keen on adding two more. We had one in St. John and one in St. John's, Newfoundland. So St. John and St. John's, they're different, obviously. One's in New Brunswick, one's in Newfoundland. Don't be confused.
Yeah,
exactly.
Into both.
Don't say to somebody from St. John that they're from St. John's, because they're going to hit you, and vice versa. And if you tell a Newfoundlander he's from St. John, he's going to hit you too. So So at the end of the day, we each got into a franchise, and look, it was a learning experience. We paid for the franchise, and we didn't have a team name, we didn't have team colors, we didn't have any management coaches, we didn't have anything. Just had a license to play. And we started out the first year I think we won 5 games out of 64. The next year we won probably 15, and then the third year we got into the first round of the playoffs, and then in what was it, 2005, we started the team. In 2011, we won a Memorial Cup, the Canadian Championship.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's quite a success story.
That's incredible.
And we've won 3 Presidents Cup, so we've had a good franchise, good run.
Have you guys had any NHL players come out of that team?
Lots. Probably we've got 12 guys playing in the NHL today. I'll give you some names.
Wow.
I don't know if you'd know them or not, because I don't know if you're a hockeyist, but Jonathan Huberdeau plays for the Florida Panthers. Have you heard his name?
Okay, I have heard his name. Yeah.
Have you heard of? You must have heard of Thomas Chabot in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thomas Chabot was our star defenseman when we were in the Memorial Cup in Windsor in 2017.
That's cool.
Nathan Beaulieu started with Montreal. Now he's playing in Winnipeg.
Oh, yeah,
Charlie,
I know who that
Charlie,
is. Yeah.
Nathan Beaulieu. His father was actually our coach for a while, and then that didn't work out. And so, anyway, Nathan's a great man. And all of these alumni, Charlie Coyle plays in Boston Bruins. Who else plays in Tampa Bay? We've got Matthew Joseph plays in Tampa Bay. We've had guys play, and we've got a guy that played in Chicago for a while. He's had a few games there. So we've probably got 8 or 10 guys that are up in the NHL, and another host of guys that are down in the American League. So it's always kind of fun to see them go to the top like that, or reach that level of success in the NHL. That's kind of that's all their dream. That's what's kind of fun about it.
And if you're playing at that level, that's your dream, right?
Totally.
How involved are you in terms of did you just jump in as an investor, or are you like day to day involved with the team?
When I went into the team, Dan, I have one rule. I said, look, I'm only going to buy this team if I have a controlling interest. Yeah. Because I'm not buying this team. And I've learned over the years that, look, if you have a controlling interest, you can make the changes and the decisions that you want. So I started as a 70-30 partner. Started at 60-40, and then it turned out that some guys didn't want to come in. So I ended up being 70-30. That was back in 2005. And after 15 years and all the other partners figuring out that this hockey business doesn't make any money, it's not much fun, writing checks, so they all left, and I'm left with the only one standing. So now I own 100%.
Wow! Is it? It's losing money now, is it not?
Oh yeah, no. We're losing our ass this year because it's the COVID environment. We can't play. We have no fans. We have sponsorship. It's a mess. It's a financial disaster this year.
And is that just because of COVID, or has it been losing money for a while?
No, Dan. Junior hockey is going through a real challenge in Canada because, for a host of reasons, I don't want to take up too much of your airtime on it because it's a small thing what I do. But yeah,
very
junior
interested
hockey,
in hearing it.
It's some franchises in each league, whether it be in the Q or the W or the Ontario League. There's some franchises that do pretty well. Some that really, really struggle to survive, and in between there, they sort of hit and miss. But most teams in Canada, which I'm not sure everybody appreciates, don't make much money, and they do it because of the passion of the sport. I do it because I like.
Sure.
I'm passionate about the sport. I'm passionate about New Brunswick. I'm passionate about what it's taught me. I've got far more out of it than I've ever put into it. And I've just learned a lot. When you're in the sport, because you own a team, then you get instant credibility with other hockey folks. So, you know what? I know all the top agents that they recruit the NHL players because you become friends with them after 15 years, and they get to know you. And then it's a very closed. It's a club. It's a closed club in many ways. But when you're investing a lot of money and you're doing it because you believe in the sport and what it can bring to the youth and the community and the province, people have a high degree of respect for that. And so they know you're in it for the right reason. And, you'd like to be profitable, and that's the goal, but it's not easy. So.
You got to sell more French fries.
It's a labor of love. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a labor of love. Yeah, you got to sell more French fries. Yeah, that's what they're good. I got to sell more of a lot of things. So it's a business we're going through. I mean, even in that business, we've got a really good management team. There's 4 or 5 key people. We've got Trevor Georgie, who's the general manager, and he's president. And he started out as running the business, and then I told him, I said, "Well, look, you're going to be the GM too." So he had to learn that. And he's done a hell of a job. But it's all about people. If you get good people in the right positions, over time you'll be successful. And so we're trying to figure out what we can do outside of hockey to generate more revenue, because the junior hockey model is really, really under a lot of pressure. So we have to find other ways to generate income to survive. And that's just what we're going to do. So
Yeah.
it's just part of being an entrepreneur. When you're running a hockey business today, you're an entrepreneur, period.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. But the private equity business I'm involved in, called
thank you.
Seaport Capital. I don't know if you want to know about that, but that's been
fun. I forgot to ask about that. I was actually most interested in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Seaport Capital, right?
Yep.
And is that your holding company, or is that something different?
No, I got approached with a few other people that had the ability to invest back about 8 years ago to start a private equity company based in Halifax. And much like the hockey team, we didn't even have a name of a company. Didn't have a name. Yeah. We had a vision. These 2 guys in Halifax had a vision. They both had worked for other private equity companies, and they wanted to start one on their own, and they needed capital. So I and the Sobey family became the large shareholders to invest in this new entity. And we had 3 guys to run it, president and 2 senior VPs to help get it started. That was back in 7 years ago. And today, we've got 5 different companies in the fold. And some are doing better than others, but it's been a pretty good success. And again, whether it's in private equity or anything else, it's all about getting good people.
So I'm really happy you went into that, because I feel like I'm foreshadowing the future. We're not there yet, but I want to be ready for when we get there, where you start out as a teenager or what have you in school, and let's say you do your BCom or your master's, and they kind of teach you finance, but not really. Nobody really teaches you how to manage your money. And then they set you free into the world, and you don't know what to do with it. And the common, I guess, train of thought is you make a bunch of money, you put a certain percentage aside, you invest it. Hopefully you're making an average of 8 to 10% a year return with, some bank or private investment company. And then you're done. But I know on the total opposite, and that's probably for most people. And on the total flip side of that, you've got, when you're making millions and millions of dollars, you'll have a team that's kind of overseeing things and picking whether you're investing in real estate or specific business models or what have you. So are you able to shed any light on what that transition looks like and how to know when, or does it all just happen naturally through needing the right people?
Oh dear. Oh, you wrapped a lot of stuff in that question, Dan.
I'm very curious.
I don't know where to start. You start at the bottom. I know you start at the bottom and then you turn around twice and you're a multimillionaire. I think I don't know what happens in between. What can happen?
Yeah.
Good or bad.
So I guess if you're looking at our situation, if it helps you formulate a more concise question.
No, it's look. As you know, my daughter's an entrepreneur, and it's not easy. What you're doing is tough. First of all, I think at the end of the day, you need to have a successful, profitable model.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that you have that, and I think you do. Your ambition is to grow it. You grow your business, and you two can know what you think is satisfactory. Is it a 10% growth? Is it on the top line and 5% on the bottom? Whatever. I mean, you can benchmark yourself against other entities that are doing similar things that you're doing and find out how they're growing and compare it to how you're growing, and then decide for yourself whether you think it's worth the effort that you're putting into it? I call that metrics the return on effort, because if you're putting a lot of effort in and you're not making any money, then that's not much fun. So you guys have to decide what you think, are you getting a fair return, and is it worth the effort, and are you having some fun along the way, and are you learning? And those are, some people discount the fact that, you can learn more from your failures than you do your successes. And so as long as you're learning and you're having some fun and you're making money, that's a pretty sweet place to be. Now, how quickly is that going to make you a millionaire? Well, look, man, it's there's a lot of water under the bridge between when you start and when you become a millionaire. It's not easy.
So once your business starts generating larger amounts of cash flow, where do
you want to put it?
Yeah, like where do you start? I mean, obviously there's tons of different investment vehicles, and a lot of people are going into cryptocurrency, and I know real estate is never old.
You could, but you know what? Like, I'll give you. Look, you could. First of all, it's good that you're making money, so that's a good problem to have. A lot of businesses are running and they're not. So the fact that you're making money and you're having to make choices with what to do with that cash flow, that's a good problem to have. And I would argue that you have to decide. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to grow, I think most entrepreneurs want to grow their business and to a certain level where it's got a certain EBITDA and a certain stability that they think they can turn around if they want to, they can turn around and sell it to somebody that's going to be interested. And so that's what most entrepreneurs kind of in the back of their minds. You know what? I'm going to run this for 3, 5, 10 years. And, if it, as long as it keeps growing, making money, and I'm having fun, I'll probably keep doing it. But if not, I'll have a business attractive to somebody else, and they'll pay me a multiple of about 4, 5, 6 times EBITDA, whatever it happens to be, and I'll cash out. But when you've got a business that's cash flow and making some money, then if I were in your shoes, I would, you'd say, well, am I going to invest this money over in Bitcoin or Royal Bank or Canadian Tire or whatever? When it's probably safe and it pays a dividend, that's all well and good, and that's a conservative thing to do. But a true entrepreneur is going to take that bit of money and he's going to say, well, look, I see another guy doing the same thing that I'm doing right down here. I'm going to go see him, and I'm going to see if I can acquire his business. When you grow your business, there's 2 ways of growing. It's organic growth, which is what you're doing today, or M&A, acquisition growth. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't. I think most would like to have the opportunity to have the cash flow to acquire and grow, because you can grow faster by acquiring somebody else. If you buy it at the right price, and you get the right, and you do your homework. If it's done properly, you can grow very quickly by M&A.
Some conversations to have.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You've mentioned a few times now that you mentor entrepreneurs in Atlantic, Canada. Is that like a mastermind group or a mentorship program? What is it?
It's under Google. It's called the Wallace McCain Institute.
Okay.
WMI, Wallace McCain Institute.
Was that your uncle?
It was my father. My father made the founding donation, or the founding investment. Started probably 2009. So what's that, like 11 years ago? Today they probably have close to 300 graduates from the program over the last 11 years.
Wow.
And every year they had 15 new entrepreneurs in the program. It's a 1-year program. And it's entrepreneurs that you have to be the president of the organization. You have to be, it's only in Atlantic Canada. It's offered in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland. It's not in Ontario.
You got to bring it to Toronto. Yeah,
well, it's. I think we take great pride in helping entrepreneurs in the eastern in that part of the country, and it's it's really bizarre. You have to apply to get in. It's almost like Survivor. It's a whole different story. But if you Google it, it's pretty fascinating. But these entrepreneurs, they go spend with other entrepreneurs. It's like YPO. Have you guys heard of YPO?
Yep. Well, I just joined EO.
Well, YPO it's the same thing as YPO, only it's on steroids. It's these entrepreneurs, they get together once a month for 3 days, and they have study groups, not study groups, but sessions, and they bring in guest speakers, and they talk about different problems, because most entrepreneurs like you, 80% of the problems are the same. It's about how do I raise more capital? How do I get better people? how do I grow my business? How do I deal with my family pressures? My all the tough stuff that, how do I deal with, like you said, how do I deal with an employee that's not cutting it? How do I, just the whole 90%, 89% of the issues, they're all the same, whatever business you're in. And so when you network these people together, it's very powerful. Once they graduate, it becomes a religion to them. It's really cool.
I was going to say, now you have me jealous that I'm not living in Atlanta, Canada.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, well, you know what you should do? You guys get off your ass and get out and set up a shop down in Halifax or something like that.
Yeah, there we go. That's what we should do.
Why can't you do the same thing down there that you're doing up here and do it better?
That's a great question, and it's kind of to answer that question, I'll tell you how we started the business. So our background was actually in franchising because we had done the student painting model. And when we had the idea to start this business, we initially didn't plan to run it ourselves. The plan was just to be the franchisor, and then to franchise it to 10 or 15 individuals
and move it.
And then that eventually for partnership reasons and whatnot, we just said, you know what, we're not in a place where we feel like this is going to be what makes us happiest. We don't want to be responsible for other people. And as I'm sure coaching business owners is just, it's a lot of therapy. You're really just dealing with their human issues. So we scrapped that idea, and we actually just created the Toronto division, and Pat was running his own franchise in Montreal. Exactly. and now, as we're growing, we're starting to look around, and on one end, I'm thinking, you're 100% right. Why don't we go and get 15 franchises across Canada, and we can really build it out? But then on the other end, I'm going, well, I'm going to go through all this headache, and I'm going to take on all this responsibility and liability to potentially make, a few percentage points, less than 5% after costs for all of this headache, when I could take exactly what you said, take that same effort and invest it in here. Yeah. and keep growing that. So I think something we're juggling with.
You're asking yourself the right questions, Dan, and every entrepreneur should. And I use the metrics a lot with young entrepreneurs. I call it not return on equity, return on effort.
Yeah.
And by you asking that question, you're asking the right question. Why would I go and set up new franchises in Halifax, Quebec City, Montreal, Winnipeg, and Windsor when I can grow more and be more profitable and have less effort? Do it right in my own backyard.
Yep.
And I think you've concluded that, and that's fine. Then then the next question is, okay, well, if there's two other guys doing what you're doing in Toronto, why don't you could say, look, I think rather than me fight with this other guy doing it, why don't I buy him in? Like before you came to my house, there was a company called, I think it was White.
Yeah, White Shark.
White Shark.
White Shark?
White Shark.
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell they were. And I mean, they came to the door and they did it and they were there. And so when you came to the door, I said, oh, geez, I don't know. Surely it can't be that difficult. And I think this guy, he seems pretty sharp. Seems pretty friendly. Why doesn't he do it? So, I just wanted the goddamn windows washed.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the
and here we are.
The struggle with, I feel like the constant thought process of someone who doesn't want to take advice is to say, well, I'm different and I know better. So I'm always trying to, when I hear myself saying that, I question it. But I also look around and I say, we started this business doing the opposite of what everybody else in the industry is doing. Most companies, they get really big. And then when they get to a certain point, they just subcontract all the work to other companies and they take their percentage. Yeah. Because we decided, instead of being the fast and cheap model, to be the quality and more expensive model. We can't do that because it would hurt our brand if we started handing off jobs to. So I've thought about a potential acquisition at some point, but I'm also going, am I really going to gain, dollar for dollar what I'm going to put into that business if I'm acquiring something that is totally on the opposite end of unless it was just to shut them down, which is.
Well, you can look, let's take the White Shark, whatever. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Well, you have to know what you're acquiring, and you have to know where. You wouldn't acquire them unless you knew that there was an opportunity to do whatever they're doing. You just can't do whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And repeat it and expect it to be more serious. You have to see what can I do that's going to add more value to that business than the way they're running it. And so you might look at it from the perspective of, look, these guys are, they do, they'll wash the windows or they do whatever they're doing, but they don't have near the quality that we do or the personal contact. And if we owned it, we would inject our own sort of secret sauce and formula into their business and whatever. Right. And we probably would say we're going to raise the prices and we're going to charge more and we're going to do better quality work and we're going to make more money. But they've got a customer list.
Yeah.
And so what you're really buying is your customer list, I think.
That's an interesting thought.
So you just say, look, but unless you had a view of what can I do differently to make that business, because I have to pay for it. I mean, they're not going to give it to you. You have to buy their customers. You have to pay for it. So, and then it becomes an issue. Okay, if I've doubled the size of my business, like in Cooper Rentals, one of the private equity, when we bought Cooper Rentals, it was a small mom and pop shop.
What is it?
They were in the equipment rental business in Ontario, and they had 4 depots. Today we're all across Canada. I think we've got close to 60. We just kept it was done half by M&A and half by organic growth. And every time we bought a mom and pop equipment rental business, we would put our own people in there. We would put our magic the Cooper difference and how we managed the rental business. And we're in the service business and we tried to service the hell out of our customers and it works. If you're good at what you do, what you guys are, then you're gonna say, I'm going in with this with the view that I'm going to be better at managing this business than they are. Otherwise, why would you do it? And you do it, and then you say, all right, instead of a $300,000 business, and maybe over a span of time, you're a $600,000 business, and then you create scale, and then it becomes an issue of making sure you have good people to help you keep that quality of service the level of standard that you've set. And that's why I go back to my argument that says it's all about the people. So if you make that acquisition, you're going to make sure it's staffed with the right people. And if you don't, that's your problem.
I'm really happy you brought that up. I feel like a good note to end on is we're still looking for other very, I guess, engaging and interesting folks to do what you're doing with us now. Do you have anyone in your circle or your network that, I mean, I'm sure you have 100 of them, but anyone that you think would want to be on this podcast with us that you would recommend?
Do you want to have somebody really fun?
Yeah.
You should talk to my GM, Trevor Georgie, who runs the hockey team.
Oh yeah. We would be very interested in that.
Wow.
And he often gives talks to young people about going to university that want to go into the business of sport, because that's exactly what he's doing.
We have a lot of friends that
want to go into the business of sport.
I think it's an interesting story that you brought up, because anyone that I know that's made it in a career like sports, it's very non-linear. They do something, like you said, they work at a smart center, and then they do something else in food, and then all of a sudden they're working on a team.
They meet somebody and they say the right things at the right time, and they get it an opportunity. And
we have a lot of friends in business school that there's probably like 10-20% of people in business school are trying to get into sports marketing. If
you want to have some fun, you'll never get a better speaker on your podcast.
I would love
this
to.
Guy, he is articulate and eloquent as anybody I've met. I've seen him on panels with Jeff Merrick at Sportsnet. This guy's he works. He's extraordinarily articulate.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Was there anything you wanted to add for anyone listening? Or
I think there's a couple things that your audience should really dial in. Is that, as frustrating as it is when you're a young entrepreneur and you guys live it and see it every day, but there's no substitute for hard work. There's no, like you talked about getting to be a millionaire, there is no easy path, trust me. And there'll be lots of failures along the way, but it's hard work, pays a lot of bills. Humility, respect, trying to, making sure that you feel like, look, you got to have that confidence that, you can take on things and you can you can conquer the world. You got to feel that. You got to say, look, not to the point where you're cocky, but you've got to get up in the morning and feel like, look, today's a new day, and whatever I'm doing yesterday wasn't good enough. I got to do better today. And whether it be driving your sales or lowering your costs, or if you get up every morning and get at it, that's how the folks in the East Coast have been successful, because they work hard, and we play hard too. But there's a lot of hard work involved. And so you and your guests, I'm sure. And there's no easy route. It's just patience and hard work. So anyway, I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad we had some fun, and good luck. And
Thank you so much,
great.
Scott. We'll
make sure you do a good job in cleaning my goddamn windows when you come in there.
Yes, definitely.
If you have any problems, Scott, I'll come there myself and do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I might not be here to even look out them, because I hope to leave here by mid-April. So anyway,
we'll do them twice just to make sure.
Yeah.
Just do them soon so I can enjoy it.
There you go.
Sounds good, Scott. Take care.
All right,
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick, just checking in quickly after the episode to say thank you so much for listening or watching. We really appreciate it. We've got some super cool interviews lined up in the near future. We're very excited about them, and we think they're going to bring a lot of value to a lot of people. So make sure that you subscribe on your platform of choice. We are officially available on all major podcasting platforms and on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe there and stay tuned for more. We'll see you next time.